welcome, Rieko. So good to see you. How long has it been since we've been face to face?
My goodness, at least 2 or 3 years maybe?
I think maybe three or more. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah. How long have you been in Portland?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. So yeah, I would say it's going toward four that we haven't seen each other. You weren't anywhere near that. So, um, I just would like our viewers to hear a little bit about you and the subject that you came in to talk about is your response to the unworthiness quiz. But I want them to put it into the context of our relationship and who you are and what you do. So start anywhere you'd like on that.
Yeah, oh, where do I start? So, I met Rosalyn in Jennifer Hadley's Masterful Living class. That was the year-long program that is all about living the teachings of A Course in Miracles and other pathways of love. And it was a very transformational time for me. So much healing happened. It was the first time I made a decision internally in earnest to make spiritual practice my number one practice, number one priority. And um, Rosalind and I spent time in the Course in Miracles conference in Boston in 2019.
Where we really got to know each other as, I think we always had a connection, always liked each other in the group, were interested in each other, supported each other. And then we had a chance, well, we were roommates for a couple of days and we got to dine together and really share lives for the first time. Yeah,
Yeah,
we went to an art museum and
that's
I
right.
got to see Rieko's drawings and got to know the other parts of her life, like yoga and dance. Uh, Rieko is a very fully dimensional person. Some people play the piano or they draw or they do something artistic. Rieko blows me away. She does so many things and does them full on, like full on great. Um, she's a translator. She's a spiritual counselor. She does websites. I have the official, I should read you the official, one of the official uh, bio is Rieko is a designer, content strategist, spiritual counselor who helps conscious entrepreneurs connect to their audience from the heart. Wanted to make sure we got that in before we, get going into stories. And I think this is really important um, because if you, even before we get into the content of why you wrote to me and the subject that you connected to, if we think of unworthiness or the old words like low self-esteem, they don't think of people who are great in their fields ordinarily, even though we know better. We hear from more and more these days from great people, but we believe there's a crazy belief around, isn't there, that unworthy people who feel unworthy are unworthy, like they're just not good enough and they know it, and we just haven't seen it yet. And that's like nuts. If you knew Rieko and the thought that she had even any percent of feelings like that, you might be surprised unless you knew that's everybody's hidden secret, unless they are the type of personality who turns unworthiness into better than. And there are a certain segment of people who just cover it over and never consciously have that thought of incompetence or unworthiness, but not so much of like I didn't write that well enough, but the more spiritual, deeper sense of something lacking, something fundamental missing, or just not fitting in, not like a hole, like something that can't be fixed or filled. And that's what I'm referring to when I use that word unworthiness. So yeah, we had a great time and a connection in Boston. And then you've gone on to develop skills in all these areas. Let's get into what is it that happened when you did the unworthiness test?
Yeah, so I forgot how many questions there are in the unworthiness quiz, but
Me too. Mhm.
did I pull this up? I think I have it with me actually. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Should I go over the questions
Yeah,
for
because
people who are
I
listening?
so long since I wrote it, and yes.
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of questions, and the response you can have to them are one, almost always or always, two, sometimes, and three, almost never or never. And it starts with, I compare myself to others. My answer's always. I assume I did something wrong in interaction with others. Yes, always, or almost always. I think of ways I should improve. Always, absolutely. I live with many rules for eating, chores, spiritual practices, exercises, etc. Yes, almost always. I believe I will be better off if I did more self-improvement. Oh my God, always. The theme in my self-talk is that I am lacking some trait. Always. I am right most of the time. Almost always. I'm either right or really wrong. I believe most people don't take responsibility for their shortcomings. That is either sometimes or almost never. I am better than most people. I am honest. I can be honest with myself enough to say that is what my small mind is thinking. So, yes, I have dealt with my past and I'm over it. Oh, yes. Isn't that isn't that how a lot of us feel after doing this for a while? Deep down, I feel superior to others or cultures. Yes, I've done enough work to know that the answer to this is also yes for me. The theme in my self-talk is that others are lacking some trait. Yes, although less often than towards myself, I know that all the self-talk is tends to be about that too. So my answer to most of these questions were basically number one, almost always or always. And
How did you feel what was that experience like to have those questions and the answers?
yeah, so it was an interesting mix, Rosalyn, of on one level, I could see the self-judgment coming in like right away. It felt a little bit like I was being called out that
Mm,
look at all those things you still think and believe in and all the judgments that come up in your
mhm.
thoughts even after all these healing and spiritual work that you've done. Shame on you, right? That voice did come on and I saw it. But on another level, there was a sense of strange relief, should I say, of the fact that you created this quiz for us, Rosalyn, means that I had the feeling that I'm not the only person who's having that experience either. So it was a mix of that. And on one more level, there was this very subtle opening and knowing that, oh, but the one who's doing all this comparison and judgment and thinking that I'm right and thinking that I need to improve or fix myself. But that's my small self. That's the ego.
Okay, so were you at all surprised when I ripped up the list for
I
you?
would, well, I was a little bit surprised in a really great way. Um, I remember very clearly that in your in the second PDF that you hand out about the result of the quiz,
Mhm.
I'm probably going to paraphrase it, but
Mhm.
you're you clearly say you have a case of mistaken identity.
Mhm.
And that's when I was like, ah, yes, that's it. And even though these, what you're saying, that, all suffering comes from identifying with that small separate self is not a new idea to me intellectually. And I've had experiences of knowing that multiple times in the past. For whatever reason, when I read your words, you have a case of mistaken identity, something really clicked for me that, oh,
So let me jump in here.
yeah.
Uh, I think that we go to trainings, we go to things like Masterful Living or wherever your path has taken you, listeners, because we're hurting and we want relief. We get directed. And then we learn words like ego or small self. And they serve for a while because they give us some understanding, which kind of makes us be able to soothe ourselves a little bit and direct ourselves a little bit. And then they can become kind of conceptual traps. And then they can even be used as judgment. Oh, you're just from the ego, it's judgment. Now more attack. Instead of being the helping hand, it becomes material for attack or for staying in our heads, which it's really hard for us in this particular culture. And that means everyone to really get that the mind isn't going to help us. Not the mind that has the thoughts and feelings. There are some pathways that call the mind of God or the mind of the universe. Let's not call that the mind. Let's not use it for our purposes because it's a little confusing here. I think the reason that those words mistaken identity hit you is maybe it reached beyond those words of ego and small self. It were new words, and they struck your heart. They bypassed your thinking mind. And I know that there's value in the thinking mind, especially when it's a tool used to get you to the airport on time and to make reservations and all the things it does. Take a sweater, it's cold out. That's a given. We're not questioning that. But beyond the use of the mind for those things, the mind that includes thoughts and feelings mostly traps us. And the way we can tell for sure is if we're ruminating, if we're going over something more than once and it's taking us down. It feels because if you put too much butter in your cookies and you go, oops, there's too much. Oh, I just put in too much butter. So now you'll correct it by upping the other ingredients to balance it. But you don't go through, oh, I'm just such an awful person. There you go again. All these other people are progressive, blah, 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 blah. So it's not that we're saying we never observe ourselves and take a new course. It's the conversation about the new course that isn't necessary. We think it is. We have an attachment in this culture to punishment in the sense that we believe it's going to improve our behavior. We were all, no matter which community you were raised in, discipline, fixing yourself, it's been instilled everywhere, right? So what if we right now take a moment and everyone connect to what your answers would have been? Maybe they wouldn't have been the same as Rieko's. Doesn't matter how many almost always you had or where you were on that test. If you're on the question of, am I good enough? And sometimes you're better than, you're on a coin that is relentless, in my point of view, and there's never enough worthiness to stop the coin from flipping. And since the years when I was starting to write a book about imagined unworthiness, I've spent unscientific, enormous time with people trying to convince them with logic that every baby deserves, for example, to come into the world as worthy. And no matter what mistakes children make, are they not still worthy? And people will go along on this kind of logic until it comes to them. And I'm now convinced that there is not enough proof, either in their lives or in logic, to stop the coin flipping. And the answer is to step out of the question. And how do we do that? So, no matter what your answers were, and thank you, Rieko, for staying in the moment, there was a you before. Let's just take the metaphorical, putting too much butter in the cookies. Maybe you snapped at someone, maybe you judged them. We understand there are more emotionally tinged episodes, and it's like episodes from a story. They're dramatic stories we have in our lives. People did this to us, we did that to them, and on and on. But let's just use the simple example of making the quote unquote mistake of putting too much butter in. And by the way, this might end up being the best cookies ever. So who knows that it was a mistake. But before Rieko put too much butter in the cookies, Rieko was still Rieko. Whatever that is, that's not about a thought or a feeling. Because if Rieko was the screw up that put too much butter in the cookies, or you were the person who did the wrongdoing, who were you before that? We are so tied and taught that we are our thoughts and feelings and behaviors. And when we use spiritual words or words taught to us, then we tend to judge them because certain words are spiritually higher or lower in the pathway. But who were you before you made that mistake? And who are you after you made that quote unquote mistake? And that nameless thing is what we can't stand. It doesn't have a form. It doesn't have a name. We can't nail it as good or bad. And so we go back to our old beliefs because we're uncomfortable, some of us, most of us, with that nothingness. But stay in that nothingness for another minute before you made your mistake or Rieko put the butter in the cookies. Is there any suffering in that one if you don't go back to another incident? Can you feel your breathing before you did the whatever? Just breathing, just aliveness. It doesn't need to have a trait. The traits keep us in the good and the bad. And this is why I don't actually agree in things like Course in Miracles that say everything's for the good. We just don't understand it. Everything is. That I go along with. But the minute you say it's good, it's for the good, you're bringing in the bad, you're back in the world of polarity, the same question of worthiness. But what if we take in the mistaken identity? I know nobody usually wants to be nothing, but if nothing meant that you're everything and you're what life is, and that means you're connected and there can never be any mistakes because it's not personal. What if? I know we've all been trained and we need to be as an outer society. We need to train right and wrong, rules. You do this, you don't do that. But that's not actually where the movement comes from. We get these ideas and it allows societies to legislate and have street signs and stop signs and all those things. Yeah, it has its place, but that's not where freedom is. Who wants to get off the merry-go-round, or tug-of-war of worthy and unworthy? Feel free to open your eyes again if you like. I've been finding that unworthiness is underneath belonging. If we feel unworthy, or even if we feel better than, we're not going to actually feel like we belong. And it also is the fundamental ingredient, this tug of war between worthy and unworthy is right beneath loneliness. Surgeon General in 2024 is now saying there's an epidemic of loneliness. Talk show hosts that are Hollywood people have entourages and all these friends and whatever life it seems to be, are admitting they're lonely. Where can that come from? It's this mistaken identity. Uh, and there isn't enough worthiness to stop the unworthiness side of the coin. So can you respond to all of that? I know I said a lot.
Yeah.
How do you feel now?
Peaceful. Peaceful in a way that's it's hard to describe. But what I can respond with, Roslyn, is that I resonated with everything you're saying, really, of going beyond, behind uh, the good and the bad, and let it be just is.
Mhm,
There's a there's a relaxing, there's a letting go, there's a probably what you're describing as ending the tug of war
mhm. Yeah.
of um, and just letting it be. And it's I've been noticing so clearly in the past couple of years how exactly like you're saying, I was using spiritual concepts to judge myself and felt kind of stuck and uh, yeah, stuck because the judgments would still keep coming,
Yeah. You
right?
never get better.
And
There's never enough.
yeah, the judgments keep coming no matter what. And things that I thought healed would still come up. The emotional reactions would still come up. And I just felt like I wasn't making any progress, all those things. But at the same time, I was also feeling this this even that struggle, the tug of war felt like an invitation to stay open for a new way of seeing it. And I feel like what you're describing is exactly that, of just letting go of the idea completely that my worthiness is dependent on my thoughts, like not just
Mhm.
my behavior, but also thoughts.
Oh,
And
totally. They come
and
and
yeah,
go. You have a new thought. Which thought were you? That one was supposedly bad. That one was peaceful. This one was aggressive. Which one were you? Were you this one and then you became that one and then you became... No, how can that be? Because there's something that observed all those different thoughts and those different states. That thing that is not your mind, because it's your mind that was thinking those thoughts and observing those feelings. It's because we only believe in the tangible. We've been trained. You do come from the Japanese culture, and maybe it's a little different, but I'm sensing that they're getting more like us in that way of believing the concrete. And I think, let me ask you this, with the tug of war, did you feel it like in the old days, more like you could win the tug of war? Like you could, if that is how the tug of war goes. If you're stronger, then you'll get it away from the other. And so I think you're saying something very descriptive for a lot of people. They're challenged, and they take up the challenge as though the solution can come from winning the tug of war, whereas you don't get a new moment unless you let go of the tug of war. If you've ever played with a dog, you have a dog, but if you ever played tug of war with a dog, if you let them win or they actually win, they bring it right back to you because they want that winning feeling again. It is not over. How can that be the solution? And when they're obsessed with tug of wars, it seems like some dogs like one thing and they always want to do that. Like if tug of war is their thing, there's no end to winning because it brings up the next. That is the way that is the way the outer world works. There isn't enough money. We watch every millionaire, billionaire. They never say, I have enough now. Let me stop. It's always more. They're not bad and we're not good. That is the nature of the outer world. We need to, if we want to feel any peace, we might be willing to open to something that is not tangible, that the mind does not understand, but we can experience. Sometimes there's a space between thoughts. There were years I didn't notice that. And I met someone who his brand was he can go to the space between thoughts at will. I thought, what are you talking about? And why is that anything? Like, I really didn't get this. But when Melissa died and I was shaken and the suffering disappeared, I did not do anything. I did not take a step or use a practice or anything. But I noticed that the suffering was gone. And I noticed she's still dead. Nothing has changed. I'm still grounded. The facts are still the facts. Where did the suffering go? And then the next thought was, can I admit it? And I always like to say that because that brings out the cultural teaching that that can't be anything. Don't tell anyone. Two things. You need to suffer because the culture says that's how you love, and that shows love. And the other is, this is too, nobody will understand. This is too weird, but it was so very attractive because I had been hurting so much before that. And I keep trying to teach this without having people suffer that much. And people say, well, how can I get it? And I think most people want to hold on to the belief in their thoughts and their feelings and still get the peace. And it doesn't work that way. But what was so soothing, and this is really not words I can put to, I'll try, but it isn't, you'll have to know, everyone, that it's not exactly this. There was a sense that Melissa didn't go anywhere when I let the suffering go. And it wasn't those times, you've known me, where I was getting direct messages and it felt like it was Melissa's voice. And then at a certain time, she said, it was her voice that said, you could say I was, my higher self. It doesn't matter who it was. But the message was, or what it was, the message was, you're too attached to me still, the me of the person. And from now on, it's going to be neutral kind of talk, not a person's voice. But there was a sense that I was okay, but not as a special Rosalyn, not as a hurting Rosalyn, just as the isness, but in the isness, it included everyone. It wasn't only my community, only Jewish people, only Japanese people, only white people, only people. And it wasn't only alive people, because she was there too. And that has become my teacher. Anytime I'm pulled into the world, like, what's happening with my Audible, or do I need to talk to somebody, or do I need to do something? If I go back to this experience, not way back, but bring that experience right now, what is that experience? It's no tug of war. If I'm in an issue that I need to do something, chances are I'm in a tug of war with it. It should have happened another way, blah, 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 blah. It's just letting go. And then right after the letting go is nothing. And if we will allow that nothing and see in our own experience if it's something, like it was for me, where the suffering was gone and I didn't want to go back. So anytime I'm tempted, nostalgia will bring back the suffering. Any kind of struggle with what is will bring it back. Guaranteed, just guaranteed. But don't take my word. Experiment. That is what the teaching is. Not what I say, but the invitation for everyone to experiment. When you let go of the tug of war and there isn't anything, let the nothing be nothing just a little longer, and see if it isn't joyful to not have the headache of suffering. Like when a headache goes away and you just feel so happy to be alive, but not happy about anything, just because the suffering is gone. It's kind of like that. When people say it's joy or it's bliss, it's the absence of suffering. And we don't know how to go there. We think, oh, meditation cushion. I need to meditate more. I need more spiritual reading. I need more this, more. That's still part of the more world. That's still part of your fixing yourself. If it makes you feel good, absolutely do it. But don't think you're going to get better by doing it. That's my advice. Your reactions.
I love this conversation so much. 'Cause I don't know, I was thinking of this phenomenon that I'm experiencing, and I'm starting to thankfully uh, move out of, thanks to things like your unworthiness quiz and this conversation, is spiritual burnout or fatigue. Basically, using spiritual concepts as a self improvement
Yeah. Yeah.
means, and there's no end to it.
No end to it, and you're just back in it because you'll have days of, oh, yay, 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 me, and then the next day it'll be down. And it's just in the world of polarity of good and bad. That is the nature. You're not, I'm not, and our listeners are not good and bad. It's the world that's good and bad. We're just alive without the judgment of how we are. Trees, just like the plants, just like the ocean, it crashes, it's quiet, just like the weather. We say a sunny day is better than a whatever storm. But that's just our minds. It's just weather, and it's full of polarity. And then there's the days that are, you haven't said what the weather is. You haven't said it's a good day or a bad day, or but it takes a lot of courage to question what we've been taught. It just takes a lot of courage because it's so easy. It's like we're hypnotized, and the message of hypnosis is you don't know you're hypnotized. So it takes a lot to say, to question our beliefs, to question but not from the good and bad, just like what's true. Where do I feel better? I'll leave you with one more thing, and I think you might be able to find this useful. When I was in India, 1995, it was my first exposure with Ramesh Balsekar, who was very good with the Western mind. And it was a conference filled with psychotherapists. And it was basically a teaching of destiny. And we love free choice in this country. But his main point is that you in the West use free choice to hurt yourself. The goal setting is because you found something lacking and you're going to do better. You're going to get more, be more, do more. And at the end of the conference, he said, you can't know with your mind what's true. You can't know if there's free choice or it's destiny. You cannot know. The mind is limited. It lives in a body, and the body is limited. But you can observe what gives you more joy. Now, this is not which idea do you like best. He said, live your life and then apply free choice or destiny and see where there is more relief from suffering. So I came home. I was a Course in Miracles student, believing in free choice. Choose again was what I held on to because I wanted to do better in my personality. I didn't like who I was. So that I went there, and they were kind of, people that were with me were kind of scared, like, oh, how's it going to be for her? Because she loves free choice. Then I came home, went into my first psychotherapy session, And I said a bunch of that stuff to the person. And I came out, and this was very typical of me to question everything I was doing, just like you said on your quiz. Why did you say that? And then all of a sudden I realized, actually, I don't even believe what I said. I don't even think it's true. I didn't want to say it. And yet I said it. Free choice or destiny. And so what I mean is, in that moment, maybe there was something that works through us and it feels like free choice. I felt like I chose to say those words. But I'll ask you, Rieko, have you ever said anything that you don't even believe or you're sorry? You said you don't even mean it, but you said it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we all have. So what if there is a force that's unrecognized because it's not the personal God? It is God if you'll see it as life, but not the man in the sky who's, like Santa Claus doing good for good and bad for bad and punishment. That isn't what we're talking about. But if it's just like weather moves the trees, and there's an exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen naturally in the world, and the wind sways the trees. What if we're moved as well? But which gives us more joy and freedom? Immediately I said, well, must have been. And I let it go. I never let it go. Every single time I get onto, why'd you do that? Especially in my profession. I don't want to harm anyone that comes to see me. If I said the wrong thing and I don't even believe it. And it was like, oh, yay. Well, I can be secure because I wouldn't have said that, but I did. So in a way, that's ultimate responsibility, but not as a person. So I'm saying I said it. I'm not taking, if the person comes in and says, why'd you say that? I'll say, I don't know. It came out of my mouth. But you're right. I don't agree with that, but they never do. When the words come like that, it was always the right moment. Or it had to happen for the new conflict to work out. I mean, you can always see, right? Like needed to be said. So I know that you have time commitments, and I'm so grateful that you are here, and all of you for listening. And I hope that you write me and Rieko with your takeaways. We will put on the musing when you get this on the document. We'll put it on the email how you can reach Rieko. She does websites. She will help you with your content. And if you would like to discuss anything that came up here or what is your personal struggle, I really recommend Rieko as a spiritual counselor. Try her out. Have a discovery call. You will love the experience.
Thank you so much, Rosalyn.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Bye for now. Oh, no.